That mountain cabin wasn't just a building, it was my sanctuary. The first home I ever bought entirely on my own, a tangible piece of my independence. It was a quiet place where I could finally just breathe after a lifetime of feeling like my needs were secondary. But a few years ago, that peace was shattered with a single video call from my parents. They beamed from the screen, announcing they'd sold it to fund my sister Olivia's extravagant wedding. They didn't ask, they just told me, as if it was a gift I was always meant to give, a sacrifice I was always expected to make. And for the first time, I decided not to. Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you'd consider subscribing to my channel, it would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Chloe, and the mountain cabin was my sanctuary. It wasn't just a home. It was the first real piece of independence I had ever earned. The money I used to buy it came from years of meticulous saving, from lunches I ate at my desk instead of going out, and from every freelance project I took on after hours. It was a tangible testament to my hard work, a place where I could finally just breathe after a lifetime of feeling like my needs were always secondary to everyone else's. But that hard-won peace was shattered with a single video call from my parents. They didn't ask for my permission. They didn't even hint at their intentions. They just told me, with wide, joyous smiles, that they had sold my cabin to fund my sister Olivia's wedding. To them, it wasn't a betrayal. It was a gift I was always meant to give. I was deep in the heart of a Q3 financial reconciliation, a task that required every ounce of my focus. When my laptop buzzed with an incoming video call, the screen flashed the name home, a word that had long since lost its warmth for me. It had become a simple label, a functional key in my contact list, but not a place of comfort. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the accept button, then clicked. My mother, Eleanor, filled the frame, her face practically glowing with a joy that I knew from experience was often a prelude to bad news for me. "Chloe, sweetheart, we have the most wonderful news," she trilled, her voice a pitch higher than usual, laced with an artificial excitement that always put me on edge. That tone, that practiced cheerfulness, always meant I was about to lose something. And my gut told me this time it would be big. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my pen against my desk, the rhythmic click-clack a steady counterpoint to her palpable glee. "What's going on, Mom?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral, a skill I had perfected over the years. My father, Arthur, then appeared beside her, his grin wide and unburdened, like a man who had just won the lottery. "You know how Olivia's been stressing over the wedding?" he said, as if it were a shared family problem that I was an active participant in solving. "Well, it's all fixed now. Everything is taken care of." I felt a quiet dread settle over me. "Oh," I replied, the single syllable hanging in the air, a small, fragile word that was all I could manage. My mother clasped her hands together, her eyes sparkling with what she clearly saw as a major victory. "We sold your mountain cabin," she announced, the words ringing with a sense of triumph. The room tilted around me. My world felt suddenly unsteady, but I forced myself to hold still, my grip on the pen tightening until my knuckles were white. "You, what?" I managed to say, the two words feeling alien on my tongue. "Your cabin," she repeated, as if I simply hadn't heard her, as if it were a simple, clear fact that I should be thanking them for. "We got an amazing offer, well above the asking price, and it's perfect. We wired the deposit for the venue this morning. Isn't that incredible? I didn't move. I couldn't. I felt frozen in my chair, an invisible force holding me in place. That cabin wasn't just a piece of property, it was a physical manifestation of my independence. It was a space I had built for myself, a refuge I had meticulously furnished with my own hands, with furniture I had sanded and stained, not just bought off the shelf. You weren't even using it, my father added, his tone dismissive. It's been sitting empty for years. The cold knot in my stomach tightened into a hard stone. I've been working, Dad, in Boston. I'm not on a permanent vacation, I said, a faint tremor entering my voice, a sign of the immense effort it was taking to stay calm. My mother chirped happily, completely missing my point. Exactly. So why let a whole house go to waste? Olivia deserves a beautiful wedding, and this way she gets everything she's dreamed of. It's your gift to her. Something in my chest locked into place, a silent, hard resolve forming beneath the surface of my calm exterior. That's wonderful, I said, with a quiet I didn't feel. My mother clapped her hands together. I knew you'd understand. Chloe, you've always been so generous. They kept talking, their faces full of celebration, utterly oblivious to the fact that they were dissecting my life, not planning a vacation. Anyway, my mother said, adjusting the camera. We just wanted to share the good news. Love you, sweetheart. Love you, I replied, a lifetime of practice in my voice, and clicked the call to end it. The silence that followed was louder than anything they had said. It was the heavy silence of a room after a bomb has gone off. I closed my laptop and reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling. There was only one person I needed to call. My friend and attorney, Natalie. I had bought that mountain cabin when I was 25 alone, with no cosigner and no congratulations from home. It was a lonely process, but one that was entirely mine. It sat on a quiet patch of land, with a wide porch and a stone fireplace that was my sole source of heat during long, silent winters. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. The one space in my life untouched by expectation or guilt. I didn't even tell my family until 6 months after I had the keys. When I did, my mother barely looked up from her crossword puzzle. Must be nice, she'd said. That was the first month I started sending money home. It was subtle at first, a few $100s here for a credit card payment, a larger check for Olivia's tuition bill, a repair for my father's car. By the second year, it was an automatic, scheduled transfer, discreetly routed through shell accounts and online banking. I never mentioned it, and they never asked where it came from. It was easier for all of us that way. At some point, I stopped counting. I also stopped visiting the cabin. It hurt less to imagine it pristine and untouched than to go back and find it filled with other people's needs and wants. But there was one thing I hadn't forgotten, a quiet precaution I had taken 18 months after closing on the property. I had moved the deed under a holding company I set up during grad school, a dormant entity I named Summit Trust Holdings. No one knew, not even Natalie. I didn't do it because I expected them to steal from me. I did it because, deep down, a part of me always knew they might. I pulled out my laptop and opened the encrypted drive. Everything was there, the original deed, the transfer paperwork, the tax filings, an insurance policy hidden in plain sight. Then I called Natalie. She picked up on the second ring. Chloe, wow, it's been a minute. I need a favor, I said, cutting straight to the point, my voice a low, steady hum. Something legal, something big. She didn't miss a beat, her professional demeanor instantly taking over. I'm listening. I think my parents just sold a house they didn't own. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A beat of professional silence. Come again. I explained everything: the video call, their beaming faces, their casual announcement that they had sold my cabin to pay for Olivia's wedding. And here's the thing, I added, my voice devoid of emotion as I opened the PDF on my screen. They didn't sell my house. They sold a property belonging to Summit Trust Holdings. Natalie's voice tightened, the shock evident even over the phone. The holding company we created together. The one that was just a dormant project. Exactly. I said, I moved the deed years ago. I just checked, and it's still under Summit Trust. They forged my signature on the sale documents. There was a long, heavy pause. Jesus, Chloe, she said. They always knew where the keys were, where the paperwork was. I gave them too much trust. You gave them everything, she corrected softly. And they used it to commit felony fraud. I exhaled slowly, the word felony echoing in my head. That word makes it real. It is real, Natalie said. And if they cash that check, it's also traceable. We're going to use this against them. We'll start with a cease and desist, and then we'll file a civil claim for fraud and forgery. I minimized the deed files and sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Do I have a case? Natalie laughed bitterly. Chloe, you don't just have a case, you have a nuclear bomb, forgery, misrepresentation, theft of corporate assets. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. It's criminal. I looked at the call thumbnail, at my parents' smiling faces, frozen in time. They thought they had gotten away with something. They thought I would nod, send a gift, maybe even offer to cover the band. I've been sending them money for years, I said quietly, the words tasting like ash. Mortgage, credit cards, Olivia's student loans. I didn't want recognition. I just didn't want them to drown. Natalie's tone softened, a rare moment of empathy. And they turned around and dragged you under anyway. I should have cut them off a long time ago. You tried, she said. You bought yourself an island. They just paddled out after you. I didn't respond. I was already drafting the paperwork. My hand didn't shake. Not this time. Let me guess, Natalie said, her voice turning back to business. You're not calling to vent. No, I said. I'm calling to fight. The template was already in Natalie's files. We modified it, swapped names, dates, and property ID, then ran it through Summit Trust's legal counsel for a formal review. Within 48 hours, a foreclosure notice was prepped, notarized, and sent to my parents' front door via certified mail. No threats, no explanations, just the facts: the sale was unauthorized, the buyer defrauded, and all proceeds were frozen, pending a legal investigation. Summit Trust Holdings was asserting its rights. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't even call. Instead, I opened our old family group chat, the one I had muted for over a year, and sent a single message: check your mail. That was it. Then I closed the app, shut my laptop, and made a cup of tea. I waited in the stillness of my apartment. The only noise was the quiet clink of a spoon against porcelain. The silence was sharp, but not empty. They'd wanted me quiet, obedient, the background figure who kept the lights on. So I gave them what they asked for, a version of quiet they wouldn't know how to handle. By morning, 3 messages blinked across my screen. One from Mom. Honey, did something happen? The mailman dropped off something confusing. One from Dad. We need to talk. Chloe, this isn't what it looks like. And one from Olivia. This is about your stupid cabin, isn't it? What did you do? I didn't answer. I forwarded them all to Natalie. She replied 2 minutes later with a single thumbs up emoji. They're rattled. Good. I put my phone face down on the table and looked out at the gray Boston skyline. I hadn't won yet, But something had shifted. For once, I wasn't the one waiting to be forgiven. I wasn't the one cleaning up someone else's mess. This time, they were going to feel what it was like to stand in a storm they couldn't see coming. The first email from Destiny, the wedding planner, landed at 6:42 a.m. The subject line read, "Urgent payment issues, Gilmore wedding." She was polite at first, almost apologetic. "Hi, Chloe. I'm following up regarding several bounced payments connected to the upcoming event. The venue has requested immediate confirmation, and the florist is asking for a new deposit. Can someone from your family give me a call?" I didn't reply. By noon, there were 5 more. The tone shifted, and desperation bled through the sentences. "The band is demanding cash upfront. The Grand Vista says they're releasing your date if they don't hear back in 48 hours. Please advise ASAP." I screenshotted each message and forwarded them to Natalie, who responded with a single thumbs up. Meanwhile, Olivia was still posting bridal selfies like nothing was wrong. Her Instagram was a wedding countdown in soft pastels, lace robes, manicured hands, champagne flutes, blessed and glowing. The comments were full of heart emojis and wishes for a perfect day. None of her followers knew the checks were bouncing, or that the string quartet hadn't confirmed. The illusion held for now, but I could see the cracks forming, a slow, inevitable fracture in their perfect world. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine and read the latest from Destiny. This one was marked urgent, response required. "Hi, Chloe. I've now received warnings from 7 vendors about pending cancellations. I've tried contacting your parents, but haven't heard back. I need to know what's going on. Please. My name is on some of these contracts. My reputation is at risk." Still, I said nothing. They had built this fantasy on money they didn't own, on a house that wasn't theirs, and on the belief that I'd stay silent forever. But silence doesn't mean surrender. I poured another glass and opened the file Natalie had sent the official injunction paperwork prepped for filing in the morning. This was no longer a warning. It was the beginning of the complete and total collapse. By 9:15 m, Natalie had filed the injunction. The court clerk confirmed receipt. The judge assigned to our case had a reputation for efficiency. And within hours, a temporary restraining order was issued. The sale was frozen. All funds were flagged for fraud investigation. Summit Trust Holdings' legal standing was now official. My parents hadn't just sold a house. They'd tried to launder stolen property through a closed loop of entitlement and assumption. I didn't need to announce it. The avalanche started on its own. By late afternoon, my phone began to buzz. The family group chat, silent for months, lit up like a flare. "Mom, honey, there's some issue with the bank. Can you check? Dad, Chloe, we're getting strange calls from the title company." Olivia, "What did you do? I didn't reply." Then came the phone calls, 10 missed calls in under 30 minutes. I muted the thread and set my phone face down on the counter. Let them spiral. Let them guess. I opened my laptop to an email from the escrow officer, CCing my attorney. "All disbursements have been placed on hold, pending legal review." Another message followed minutes later from the buyer's real estate agent. "Please contact us immediately to clarify the ownership structure. Our client is extremely concerned." I took a long sip of coffee and refreshed Destiny's inbox. A new subject line had appeared. "Help. I'm losing control of the wedding." She had no idea just how much worse it was about to get. I didn't enjoy watching things fall apart in a celebratory way. But there was a quiet, brutal satisfaction in letting cause meet effect. They had acted without asking, without checking, without once considering that I might not just lie down and take it. Now the money was locked, the timeline was wrecked, and every call they made bounced off the same wall, my silence. I closed every tab but one, the live status of the restraining order. It read active. Natalie texted, They're going to feel this by morning. I didn't answer. I just watched. The call came just after midnight. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. A part of me wanted to hear how far they had fallen. Chloe, my mother's voice was almost unrecognizable, thin and reedy with panic. Sweetheart, please don't hang up. I didn't say anything, just listened to her ragged breathing. Dad's voice came next, brittle and strained, but still trying for an impossible calm. We just need to talk. There's been some confusion, something with the bank. You mean the fraud investigation? I said, the words cutting through the static with the precision of a scalpel. That confusion, a silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Chloe, we didn't know, Mom whispered, her voice cracking. We thought, you thought what? My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. That the cabin was just sitting there waiting for you to sell. That you were entitled to something you never earned. We needed the money, she said, her voice almost childlike in its plea. Olivia's wedding. You've had money. I cut in, my tone flat. You've had my money. What, $800 a month for 4 years I paid your mortgage, covered your credit cards, car payments, half of Olivia's tuition. You didn't ask, but I gave anyway. More silence. I thought it was from a relative, Dad murmured, the lie thin and pathetic. It was, I said, the one you raised, the one you taught to be useful, not loved. Mom started crying, loud, hiccuping sobs. We didn't know it was you, she wailed. No, I said softly. You didn't want to know, because if you knew, you'd have to feel guilty about how easy it was to take. We were just trying to keep things afloat, Dad said, the last vestiges of his authority gone. You're doing so well, and that's why you thought I wouldn't notice when you stole from me. Don't say that, Mom cried. We are family. No, I said softly. You didn't raise a daughter. You raised a safety net. There was no yelling on the other end, no excuses left. I was your guardian angel, I said, and you stole from her. I hung up, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing else left to say. My phone lit up again seconds later. I powered it off and sat in the dark, the only sound in the room my own breath. They weren't calling to make it right. They were calling because they finally realized what it meant to lose me. The headline hit the local news 2 days before the hearing. Bride's family accused of real estate fraud to fund $120K wedding. I didn't leak it, but I didn't stop it either. Destiny, the planner, gave a statement to the press, tearful and angry. She said she had been misled, that she was left with thousands in vendor losses and a ruined reputation. The comments were brutal. Sympathy wasn't with Olivia. In court, the prosecutor laid out everything, the forged signatures, the illegal sale, and the financial trail tracing back to Summit Trust Holdings. They called me to the stand first. I spoke plainly, no tears, no vengeance, just numbers, timelines, and receipts. My parents sat at the defense table, stiff and pale, their faces empty of their joyful masks. Their lawyer didn't say much. There wasn't much to say. Then Olivia took the stand. She lasted 3 minutes before unraveling completely. She's jealous, she shouted, pointing at me. She's always been jealous. She couldn't stand that it was my turn to be happy. Miss Wexler, the judge warned, she doesn't want a family. She just wants to ruin everything. Security was already moving before the judge gave the order. They escorted her out as she kicked over her chair. The room was silent again. The judge turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Wexler, you didn't just violate the law, you violated trust. You didn't ask, you didn't warn, you forged your daughter's name and treated her property like a family ATM. Mom's lip trembled. Dad just stared at the floor, a haunted look in his eyes. When you forged her name, the judge said coldly, you forfeited the right to call yourselves her family. The gavel came down. Charges were filed. Sentencing would follow. Outside, cameras waited. I said nothing. I just kept walking, past reporters, past flashbulbs, past the courthouse steps. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt finished. I drove to the cabin. It looked exactly the same chipped white shutters, same creaky porch step, same wind chimes my mother once bought on a roadside trip and forgot about the next day. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked through each room slowly. The furniture was just as I'd left it, intact, untouched. But something in the air had shifted. It smelled like memory, not home. Every corner held a ghost of something that used to comfort me. Now it just reminded me how easily comfort can be turned against you. I paused by the bookshelf, my fingers tracing the spine of a novel I'd reread during one long winter break. I used to dream in this house, plan futures, breathe freely. Then I thought about the call, the one where they told me it was gone like it had never mattered. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked out over the quiet landscape. It had been my sanctuary, my proof that I could build something without them. Now it was just a box full of someone else's assumptions. I stood, pulled the key ring from my pocket, and walked back to the kitchen. There was no dramatic gesture, no slam. I simply placed the keys on the counter. A quiet exit from a place that no longer needed me and that I no longer needed. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. Back in Boston, I sat on the floor of my apartment and opened my contacts, one by one. I deleted them. Mom, Dad, Olivia, every cousin who had sent guilt-laced messages about keeping the family together. It didn't sting. It felt like cleaning. Then I opened a new account at a small credit union no one in my past had access to. No joint permissions, no auto transfers, just mine. When the call came, I almost let it go to voicemail, but I answered. "This is Detective Rowe," the voice said. "I thought you'd want to know your case is leading to others. We've had 3 more adult children report financial abuse since your hearing. They saw your story." For a moment, I didn't speak. Then I said, "Good. Sometimes it takes one person being willing to burn the whole thing down." He paused and hung up. I stared at the screen a little longer, then shut it off. That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No one needed to know. The only destination that mattered was somewhere they couldn't follow. At sunrise, I boarded a train headed north. The trees blurred past the window, and for the first time in years, I wasn't calculating anyone else's needs. I wasn't checking my balance to cover someone else's mistake. The phone in my lap didn't buzz once. No one knew where I was. No one expected anything. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like freedom.